Hi, my name is Sean. I ran for the 2025 Canadian election. I was covered by the media and even went on national news. If you already know this channel, you might be wondering, Sean, don't you make videos on art history? What are you doing in politics? And also, Sean, aren't you an anarchist? What are you doing in electoral politics? Yes, I'm still an anarchist, by the way, but then you might be wondering, why did you run? And how was your experience? So let's talk about it. Really briefly, for those who don't know, especially those in America, there's 343 electoral districts in Canada. Every district elects a representative, and basically most representatives run for a party, and the party with the most representatives, or the most elected candidates, becomes the government, and the party leader of that party becomes the prime minister. So now you're probably wondering, which party did I run for? In Canada, there are four major parties. The NDP, which is mostly more on the left. There's the Bloc Québécois, which is more about Quebec, I guess. The Liberal Party and the Conservative Party. Liberal and Conservatives are kind of self-explanatory. Then there's like two smaller parties, the Green Party, which is like any other Green Party, and the People's Party of Canada, which is more like of a Republican-esque, like for the Americans, it's like a Republican Party-esque party. It's kind of a laughing stock here. They didn't do that good. But they'll come back in the video, don't worry about it. There was one candidate of the PPC, I think they're called, Popular Party of Canada, and it was kind of fun. All right, so the party I ran for was the Rhinoceros Party. Let me tell you about the Rhinoceros Party. The Rhinoceros Party was created in 1963 by the socialist writer and doctor Jacques Ferron, and before going any further, it's important to say that the Rhinoceros Party is a satirical party. No rhinoceros candidates has ever or ever will win an election. The whole point of the existence of the Rhinoceros Party is to reject the legitimacy of the electoral system by making fun of it, by making ludicrous electoral promises such as abolishing the law of gravity because Canadians never voted on it and because it keeps pulling us down. Rhinoceros Party candidates are there to make people laugh, but also to criticize. Refusing to play the electoral game, refusing to give it credibility, is an act of disobedience, and being able to actually be on the ballot, to be covered by media, and attend debates helps, in a way, to legitimize the criticism of bourgeois electoral democracy. Jacques Ferron created the Rhinoceros Party in 1963, which isn't a coincidence because the 60s was extremely tumultuous, not only in America, but also in Canada, especially in Quebec. In Quebec, there was this wave of nationalism, but not like in the right-wing sense, more like in the liberation nationalism, where there was a strong criticism of British colonialism in Quebec. There was a movement for the independence of Quebec to become its own country. There was the RIN, which is like the first party to want Quebec to become its own country. There was the FLQ, which was the Front Libération du Québec, which is a revolutionary, very socialist, Marxist organism that got really popular. Some may call them terrorists because they use bombs. Jacques Ferron himself said that the FLQ and the Rhinoceros Party were kind of cousins, but they were just using different means or different weapons, I guess. By the way, though the Rhinoceros Party is very present in Quebec because of that whole history, it's still all over Canada, but it's mostly present in Quebec. So Jacques Ferron started the Rhinoceros Party, and a lot of people were involved in the Rhinoceros Party because they were criticizing the legitimacy of Canadian politics in Quebec. And but that's not what my criticism is. That's not why I got involved in the Rhinoceros Party. Most people who have that criticism go for the Bloc Québécois. They defend Quebec in Canada. So the Rhinoceros Party kind of changed from being more of a nationalist Quebec kind of thing, where we say we don't recognize Canada's power in Quebec, to more of a, I would say anarchist. Well, at least personally for me, I'm more of an anarchist, right? So I used it as a criticism of electoral politics in general. So I'm an anarchist. I made a video about it a while ago. If you want to check it out, you can. It's about an hour long. It's an introduction. It's pretty good if you ask me. But in a nutshell, what anarchism is, it's a criticism of hierarchical power, of people having more power than others, and especially of systems that can concentrate that power into the hands of a few. Either it be economic or political. Very often it's the same. I obviously see capitalism as a system that concentrates the power, economic power, in the hands of a few. I think that's pretty obvious. Workplaces, for example, are not democratic at all. the boss is pretty much a dictator in your workplace. The boss decides how you dress, which words you can use, when to smile, when not to smile, when to come in at work, when you can leave. And all these things show that there isn't, democracy doesn't exist, at least not in the workplace and not in the economic way. But what about in the political way? So what about democracy, right? Electoral politics or representative democracy. That's what I criticize a lot during my campaign. Both capitalism and electoral democracy. I think it's easier for a lot of people to criticize capitalism, even though it can be very hard, than to criticize electoral democracy. Because for a lot of people, electoral democracy is like the standard for liberty and freedom in the world, right? But I criticize electoral democracy, not because I don't believe in democracy. I do believe in democracy. I just don't think that the political system in which we live is democratic. I wanted to make a whole section of the video on this. Maybe I'll have to make actually a whole video on that instead of just a section in a video. But I'll give you a quote by Jean-Jacques Rousseau, which I absolutely love. By the way, Jean-Jacques Rousseau is not some like radical Marxist or whatever. He was like a 18th century philosopher. Sovereignty, for the same reason it is inalienable, cannot be represented. It lies essentially in the general will, and will does not admit of representation. The people of England regards itself as free, but it is grossly mistaken. It is free only during the election of members of Parliament. As soon as they are elected, slavery overtakes it, and it is nothing. And there's the whole argument of political power being taken captive by economic power, or the economic concentration of power, which coins the term bit bourgeois democracy, if you've ever heard it. But anyway, we'll talk about that in a video I make on democracy one day, right after my video on fascism, which will definitely come eventually. Don't worry about it. So I don't believe that our democracy is democratic. I don't believe it does what it claims to be doing, and especially under capitalism, I believe that the wealthy few are actually in power. That's why I don't really believe in representative democracy. I prefer the term, and that was coined by one of my old teachers, Francis Dupuléry. I don't know if he chose it or if anyway, he wrote it in a book. It's called elective aristocracy. I prefer that term. So all this to say, I ran for the elections because I wanted to criticize from within this elective aristocracy, but not from within in the sense that I want to come in and change things, because I'm not going to change anything with the Rossers Party. I'm not going to be elected. I knew for a fact that I wasn't going to be elected. What I wanted to do was have fun, have a nice experience, make people laugh, make myself laugh, which I did a lot, and finally be able to make people think by using the platforms such as the media, debates, interviews and stuff like that, and being able to talk to people with the legitimacy of being an actual candidate, and use that as a way to confront people with their relationship to democracy and how they feel represented or not, and their relationship to capitalism and how all these things mix in together. I didn't come in with solutions or proposals that were serious. I don't believe that politicians can bring solutions to the table when the problem is so ingrained within our system. I think the solution is to dismantle that system. So what was nice about my campaign was that I was using those levers, as I was talking about earlier, to challenge the system, to say, all right, the problem here, when people are asking me what to do about the environment, for example, what I would say is the problem isn't that we're electing the wrong people, right? The problem is the system. It's not the people at the head of the system, but the system itself. And being able to say that, and having the legitimacy to say it by being a candidate was absolutely amazing. And during my whole campaign, I didn't criticize people personally or criticize the other candidates personally, because again, what I wanted to do is make a systemic criticism and to show that these people around me, they might be very well-intended, but whatever solutions they have to bring to the table will never address the root of the problem. There'll always be reforms that may slow down, inequalities, that may slow down ecocide and all that, but will never address the problem because they never address the root of the problem. I say I never criticized individual candidates, but I did criticize the individual People's Party of Canada candidate, just because he's kind of far right, you know. And not attacking personally candidates was really to my advantage, at least I believe so, because I got a lot of sympathy. For example, during a debate that was televised, I can show it to you. I made a joke about erosion, and in that joke, people in the crowd, which were mostly friends of the Bloc Québécois, and even the candidates around me, were laughing at that joke. They thought it was funny, right? It creates some sympathy, not only for my jokes and all that, but then my points when I was telling them, I feel like people were more open to listening to them because I was able to make them laugh, because I was able to connect with them on a human level.
Sur les roseaux côtières, qu'est-ce qu'on entend faire pour les roseaux côtières?
Moi, tous les concepts qui commencent par le mot Eros, je suis pour.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur Grenier.
By the way, the lady laughing there has been a minister for about a decade. Even though she's one of the most powerful people in Canada, I still believe she couldn't do much to make the world a better place because these people have to work for the system, not against it. They can apply reforms that can help the issue, for example, climate change, but they'll never attack the root causes of the issue. During that same debate, I made, the only serious point I made was about climate change. I was talking about how climate change cannot be solved within a capitalist system just because of the logic of capitalism, right? Of extraction, production, consumption, and that this logic is at odds. It's antagonistic with the health of the planet. And that was the only time I was actually serious in that debate. And it was also the only time I got quoted by the CBC, which is like the equivalent of the BBC in Canada. And I got quoted with like an anti-capitalist quote. I was so happy about that. I'm so happy about it, I'll translate it and read it for you. As long as our democratic system is tied to the capitalist system, we'll always want to extract as many resources as possible, laments Mr. Grenier. Monsieur Grenier, I guess. I'm not going to anglicize my name. We'll always want to consume as much stuff as possible to make profits, but ultimately, who wins? It's a tiny fraction of the population, while the rest of the planet suffers. There aren't many jokes in this. I'm sorry to disappoint you with that, but that's really how I feel, they concluded, followed by a wave of applause from the audience. That made me feel really cool. Alright, so let's talk about the campaign. Alright, so my electoral district is called Gaspésie-Île-de-la-Madeleine-Bistigouche, and it's a huge district. It's extremely large. It has Anglophone communities, Francophone communities, it has indigenous communities, it has plenty of different economic sectors such as fisheries, lumber, tourism, and it has a lot of old people. So I started my campaign with Facebook posts and absurd promises. These promises were specific to my region, and they're in French, so it would be hard for me to share them, but for example, I promised to build a bridge that would be over 300 kilometers between the city of Gaspé and the Magdalen Islands. I also promised to protect the name of a famous highway name, the Trans-Canadienne, the Trans-Canadian, from anti-woke politicians who might want to rename it, and I wanted to give the right to vote for the endangered caribous of the mountains in Gaspésie so we can listen to them. And from these Facebook posts and from being an official candidate, I started getting interviews in newspapers, on television, and on radio, both on commercial radio and on public radio. Of course, the media loved it because I made them laugh. I was making stupid promises, but one of the things that I kept harping on, and sometimes I would do it too much, and I wasn't that funny because of it, was to use the Rhinoceros Party's platform and philosophy to criticize the system and to criticize capitalism, especially when it came to like climate change. And the media was my best friend during that election. I don't know if it's because like we're in a very isolated area of Canada. It could be because I'm very friendly. It could be because I'm kind of clownish and like I'm not seen really as a threat. There could be different reasons for that. And maybe it's a combination of all of them. But yeah, the journalistic practice of my region was amazing. They were very transparent. They gave me a lot of place to tell my ideas. I couldn't thank them enough. But it wasn't only local media that gave me a platform. There was also, very importantly, at least for me and for my pride, there was national television. I went twice on national television, meaning, well, it's in French, right? So it's national television, like mostly Quebec, but there's also like French communities all around Canada. And I was on the television for all of these French communities. That was a lot of fun. Here, you can watch one of them.
En Gaspésie, c'est Sean Grenier qui représente les rhinocéros et il y a des solutions innovantes pour éviter que le pays vire à droite.
J'aimerais ça que la 132 soit un one-way qui partirait de Matapédia à Matane. Fait comme ça, on tourne toujours à gauche, parce que c'est fini les virages à droite.
Sean Grenier du Parti Rhinocéros.
Ouais.
Là, on s'en va dans Gaspésie, Île-de-la-Madeleine.
Ouais.
Lui, là, c'était un candidat multitâche.
Parle-moi de ça.
Il y a ça, gars, il est capable de faire 8 affaires en même temps.
C'est vrai.
Puis Sean, dans un débat, il s'est dit pour l'érosion des berges.
Pourquoi?
Pourquoi?
L'érosion.
And those appearances gave me a lot of credibility and notoriety, which I believe really helped during the campaign and with my election results. All right, before going to the debates, I want to talk about my interactions with people when bringing up the Rhinoceros Party and when talking about my criticism of the system, because not everyone is super enthralled by having someone criticize the system, especially democracy, right? But by talking to people, I realized a lot of people feel cynical about politicians, about electoral politics. They do not believe that they work for them, and that filled me with joy and made my interactions with people a lot easier. I had one person who was kind of angry at me because they were like, "Yeah, you're undermining the institution of democracy," but that was one out of like hundreds, probably. So I'm very happy with these odds. One thing that stood out for me was that I expected a lot of younger people to be into the criticism of capitalism and the state and electoral politics in general. But as I said, Gaspésie is a very, very elderly region, and I was surprised by how much also elderly people hated electoral politics. Usually they're the kind of people who turn out the most for electoral politics. They're the ones who take it more seriously. But by talking to them, they were telling me, for example, something that stood out for me so much was that they were telling me that they voted for 40 years. That's about 10 elections, right? And that they were always voting for the person that they believed represented them the best. And that despite that, they still felt like they weren't getting the right end of the bargain, right? They felt like the situation in their region especially was getting worse, and that their kids and that their grandkids weren't doing better, and that actually they were kind of worried about their future. And they were kind of hinting, or they were accepting the fact that electoral politics are not going to bring solutions to the great problems that we're facing in our epoch. So yeah, my anarchist talking points did pretty good actually during the electoral campaign, surprisingly. All right, so for the debates, I did 2 debates. One was in a college in Matane, and the other was at an elderly people's club thing, 50 years and up, in Saint-Anne-des-Monts. Obviously, I was expecting the one in the College of Matane to do better because of it's a crowd that's a bit younger, maybe with the same values as me. And I was right. It didn't do that great in the Elders Club thing. It still did amazing. It just didn't do as well as it did in the college. The one in the college went amazing. It was a great experience. Hello to the people who were at the debate if you subscribe to my channel. As I said, you should in the debate. Young people with, we spoke about Palestine. I wore a keffiyeh while we did. We spoke about trans issues. We had a lot more time than we did at the other debate. We were less candidates as well. We were 3 instead of 4. I was able to make fun of the right-wing politician, which was a lot of fun. And yeah, it was a great experience. I really loved it. Oh yeah, one thing about that debate is that I was initially not invited because they thought that by inviting me, a Rhinoceros Party candidate, it would delegitimize their debate. But then I contacted them. I told them what I was doing and the ideas that I was proning, and that I wasn't just a troll, even though I kind of am, but I actually had ideas to back up the trolling that I do. And they told me, yeah, some students were putting pressure on us to invite you, so why not? We'll invite you. And I did. I got there. And after the debate, a lot of people came to me, especially students, but also the organizers, and were like, oh, it was good we did a good thing to invite you. So that made me happy as well. So yeah, as I said, amazing topics, questions about Palestine, trans rights. There wasn't a question about capitalism, but I brought it up, obviously, as I always do. And then a student asked me a question which often came up during my campaign, and I want to bring it back after I talk about the second debate. The second debate was at an old age club, which kind of set the tone. I didn't do that good at that debate. I don't think so. But a lot of people watched it. It's online if you want to watch it. But yeah, I had a lot of fun doing it. But there was we were 4 candidates. We had less time. and the incumbent and the one who got elected, actually, because I didn't get elected, spoilers, they were debating very fiercely, and I was right in the middle of them. It was hilarious, but I wasn't, I couldn't expand on my ideas as much as I wanted to, just because, yeah, they were going at it, both of them. You can watch, you'll see.
Jamais le gouvernement du Parti du Bloc québécois n'a levé le petit doigt pour parler des pêches. Ça fait que, mais là, je comprends là, qu'au niveau du Bloc...
But the debate went well. I made people laugh in the audience, even though they were mostly for the guy to my right. The first joke I ever made, I made a joke about how I wanted the separation of church and state, and because of that, I wanted to abolish the economy at the government. And then there's a lady who laughed, and then I thought that was really funny because nobody else laughed. So I pointed her out. I was like, hey, someone thought I was funny. And then the guy to my right, the guy who got elected, said, yeah, that's my wife. She thinks you're hilarious. That was really funny. Okay, one last joke that I did during that debate that was hilarious. Hilarious to me, but not hilarious to everyone. And because it was kind of awkward, there was like this awkward silence after my joke, it makes the joke so much better. Okay, so I'll put you in context because it's in French, right? But it's still good, I believe. I hope so. I was asked about the maritime ports, right? Like wharfs or whatever, ports that boats come in or whatever. And I had no idea what to answer to that because I didn't have any jokes prepared for ports, right? So I had to come up with one. And in French, ports can also mean porks. I don't know if that made sense, but I'll put it on the screen. Ports also means porks, or it's pronounced the same way. So I made a joke about porks. And I said, I'm going to make a joke that Christian Rioux, the candidate of the Popular Party of Canada, which is very anti-immigration, is not going to like. And I said, I don't like ports because they're haram. And I think that's hilarious. It's hilarious because the PPC doesn't like immigrants, and mostly when people don't like immigrants in Canada, it's mostly Muslims, and they have this conspiracy theory that, leftists are in league with Muslims and all that. It's a whole thing. So I was just saying I didn't like porks because it was haram, as if I was Muslim as well and a leftist. I'm not a Muslim, by the way. And this was the reaction of the crowd.
Une blague qui va peut-être irriter Christian Rioux. Moi, j'aime pas le porc parce que c'est haram.
Merci, Monsieur René.
De rien.
Let's watch it again. It's so good.
J'aime pas le porc parce que c'est haram.
Merci, Monsieur René.
De rien.
So I don't know if people don't know what haram means, or if they were made uncomfortable by the fact that I called him Islamophobic, or if they were just uncomfortable because I brought up Islam in a very secluded area of Canada. But in any case, it's hilarious. I love it. So even if that debate was a bit more difficult for me, it was still amazing, right? I got 2 quotes from that debate that went on national television, and I got a quote in regional radio, and an article written about that, and that quote was on anti-capitalism. So I'm winning anyway. Now, for the question I was talking about that a younger college student asked me in front of everyone, I was very happy that they asked me that question because I love answering to that question. And that question was something along the lines of, don't you think that by making jokes about these very important issues, you are undermining the preoccupations of, in this case was young people, but I think this could be applied to the preoccupations of the people, right? Or don't you think that you're kind of making fun of people's worries and making fun of people's conditions, which they're very serious, right? And that's a really good question, so let me answer it. It's a question that is often brought up to Rhinoceros Party candidates, and I don't want to answer to that question because it's not as entertaining. I want to answer to a comment that was left on my previous video when I said I was running for the Rhinoceros Party, right? That comment is a bit more sassy, so it's going to be a lot more fun to answer to it. Great video. Shame about you deciding to waste your energy on a joke campaign rather than promoting something that encourages people to engage with politics productively, rather than make dumb jokes dismissing the people trying to do something while society burns. You'll be so much fun around the post-apocalyptic campfire, telling everyone how right you were to not even try. Okay, it's the end of the video. I had a script for this whole video, and I kind of like improvised it. But for this response, I want to read my script just because I think it's important, and it kind of shows the whole reason why I was a Rhinoceros Party candidate. And it's the end of the video anyway, so if you're all the way here, you're already invested. So even if I read my script in front of you, you'll be fine, right? Don't click off my video, please. All right, so I don't think there's such a thing as engaging with politics productively when it comes to electoral politics. As I said when talking about the carbon tax, for example, it's not a solution to climate change because it doesn't address the roots of the problem. The roots of the problem is capitalism and its logic of infinite growth, extraction, production, and consumption. I really think at this point that the minimum it takes to do something, or to even try, is to start by dismantling capitalism. Also, many Rhinoceros Party candidates are activists who use the Rhinoceros Party as a way to get media attention and use the electoral circus as a way to get their message out. I did it personally, and I had the pleasure to meet the candidate in the district right next to mine, and she's much more involved in grassroots mobilization in her community than she is... Oh, there's a cat. Hello, cat. Than she is in the Rhinoceros Party. Not many people are very involved in the Rhinoceros Party, right? Chantal Poulain is also a candidate, and she was one of the Extinction Rebellion activists who blocked a Montreal bridge a couple of years ago. So the way I see my involvement in the Rhinoceros Party and other people's involvement in the Rhinoceros Party isn't a rejection of politics, but a rejection of electoral politics. Back to reading. My faith in electoral politics when it comes to bringing positive changes to the world is at an all-time low. Politics, however, when it comes to community building and mobilization, and especially constructing counterpower, is probably the most effective way to fight, or at least adapt, to climate change. So in your comment, when you say, dumb jokes dismissing the people trying to do something while society burns, this really illustrates our disagreement. I'm not dismissing people who are trying. I'm dismissing the system in which these people are trying to change the world. Do you know Stephen Guilbeault? Stephen Guilbeault was an activist and director of Greenpeace in Quebec. He climbed the CM Tower in 2001 and was arrested for it. 20 years later, he's the Minister of Environment and Climate Change for the Liberal government. The same Liberal government which, if elected, which it was elected, will build more pipelines under Mark Carney. I don't think Stephen Guilbeault's intentions are bad. I think he's probably doing his best, probably trying to change the system from within, but he can't. He obviously can't, as we're seeing in Mark Carney's government, right? And that's not a problem of people not trying enough to change the world, right? Or not doing their best or whatever. It's a problem of the system incorporating climate activists and stopping any change from happening. So yeah, I'm growing increasingly skeptical of work that is done in parliamentary politics because it will always be done within a capitalist framework, and because of that, it will always be done for the interest of a few and at the expense of the planet. That's just an example. We could also talk about wealth inequality, we could talk about the rise of fascism. All these things within a capitalist framework cannot be addressed properly because we will never, as long as we don't question capitalism, we'll never address the roots of those problems. All right, so for the results, very quickly, I didn't win the elections, but I wasn't planning on it. I didn't want to, and I knew basically in the last 20 years, only one candidate in the Rhinoceros Party got over 1% of the vote. I was thinking if I could get 1% of the vote, I would be the first one in 20 years, right? That would be a victory. And I got 1% of the vote. I won. Not only did I get 1% of the vote, I got more votes than the Popular Party's candidate. The Rhinoceros Party, a joke party, got more votes than a serious right-wing extremist party. I'm a winner, baby. And not only did I get over 1% of the vote, which was a first in the Rhinoceros Party for 20 years, there's two other candidates in Quebec that also got 1% or more of the vote, meaning we're three people who got over 1%, which is a first in 20 years. It says a lot about the state of politics in Canada and in Quebec and how people feel about politics and feel about the system. So yeah, I didn't win my elections, but I got 569 votes. That's amazing. And I got to talk in media about climate change, about capitalism, about how the system always prioritizes the needs and the interests of a wealthy few. To me, those were the reasons why I got involved, and I feel like it went really, really well. So yeah, I won my elections in my heart, in my head, in my soul, and I had a lot of fun. So yeah, that's another victory. I had a lot of fun. There was a whole thing I wanted to discuss, if this was an art performance. It kind of was an art performance. A lot of people mentioned it, knowing that I do things on art, right? On how was that an art performance? And I think it was, but I don't know. This video is long enough already. I'm kind of tired from my campaign. So that was my campaign with the Rhinoceros Party. I didn't really plan a conclusion. So I guess what I want to say is get involved in politics, but outside of the electoral politics circus. If you do get involved in the electoral politics circus kind of thing, do it to make fun of them. And then organize outside of your electoral politics, right? In communities, do community building, alternate power structures, protests, food not bombs, things like that. I don't know. It depends on where you are in the world and what the needs are. But yeah, there are ways to do politics outside of voting. And those ways are often more important and a lot more impactful than voting. So yeah, go out there. Hopefully I inspired with my jokes. I don't know. All right. See you in the next video. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video, this more like vlog type video. I wanted to initially bring you to the Magdalen Islands. I had like a plan of doing like a road trip and stuff like that, but then my car broke down, so that didn't work. So now we're just in the backyard of my friend's house. Not as fun, but the content is still the same. It's just not packaged the same way. I just wanted to share my experience. I loved it, and I hope you enjoyed hearing about my experience. I wanted to thank, I usually have them, I know them by heart, but I'm kind of tired today. Roman Brandel, X Townsend Jeff, and all my other patrons. I want to thank them for supporting the channel. Very, very appreciated. It allows me to do things such as making videos and also running kind of satirical political campaigns, which I had a lot of fun doing. And I couldn't do it if I didn't have my YouTuber schedule. Did you hear that? That was a seagull. So yeah, I couldn't do that without my YouTuber schedule, which gives me a lot of flexibility. And the reason why I have a YouTuber schedule is because of patrons and of people who watch the whole video and watch my outros. So thank you very much, both to people who are patrons and for people like you who watch my outros. Thank you. I don't know what else to say. Video on fascism coming soon. Hopefully. If it's not, I was thinking of making a video on Albert Camus. I know, kind of weird. I'm almost done taking my notes. I started writing my script for my fascist video on fascism. Anyway, see how tired I am? This running an electoral campaign and doing interviews on the radio. Oh, so exhausting. All right. I'm joking. Well, it did take energy, but I'm not exhausted because of that. I've been exhausted because a lot of things are happening. Anyway, enough said. See you in 2 weeks for my next video. Either on fascism, I don't think so though. Probably on Albert Camus. It'll be a lot of fun. It's about his like Nobel Peace Prize speech. Incredible speech that I heard in some event, and I was really inspired by it, and I want to discuss it. So we can do that. Or maybe it'll be about some other artists. Maybe it won't be about Camus. I don't know. We'll see how it goes. We'll see how I feel. Thank you so much for watching, and I guess we'll see what video comes up in 2 weeks. Goodbye. See you soon.